That means that my electronic agenda is not yet up in front of me. So let me see your paper agenda here. Mr. Hess, sorry for taking that to you, from you. Item 1 on our agenda here today is public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item that is within the jurisdiction of the Audit Committee, but is not on today's agenda. Public comment can and will be limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone here wishing to speak during the public comment period? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and move it on now to item 2, which is always a controversial item, the election of the chairman and vice chairman of the Audit Committee for this upcoming year.
I'd like to nominate Supervisor Pete Vanderpool for chair.
Thank you very much. Second. I will take that nomination. I enjoy being the chairman of this fine and riveting committee.
I'll second it.
Any, do we want to do vice chair at the same time?
Okay, so I'd like to nominate John Hess for vice chairman.
Okay, and I will second that. So, any other nominations from the floor? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. Not as controversial as approving the meeting minutes at the Water Commission in Tulare County. That gets to be pretty controversial at times. All right, now we're going to move on to item 3, which is a request to approve the meeting minutes from the October 4th, 2018 meeting. I hope everyone has had a chance to review those. Any questions or comments related to them?
If there's no questions or comments, I'd move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Britt.
Second.
All right, a second by Member Flores.
And then just for clarification, I am able to vote on this even though I was not part.
As long as you reviewed, is my understanding.
Okay.
I'm not an attorney, and attorneys usually like to complicate things, but that's my basic understanding. Okay. So based on that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. All right, we will now move on to item 4, which is a request to receive a presentation on the introduction to the County of Tulare Audit Committee. And I'm glad that we have this item because we have many new faces up here on the committee. I believe this is your first meeting,
Yes.
John?
Yep.
Your first meeting,
Correct.
Supervisor Valero? Your first meeting? Or as CAO, you were HHSA, but in a new seat with a new face. Yes, you're Jason Britt. But yeah, we can go ahead and move forward with the presentation.
Good morning, members of the Audit Committee. Justin Avila, Chief of Financial Reporting and Audits. Yeah, with a couple new members, we thought it'd be a good idea to do an introduction to the Audit Committee and do an overview of our division and the types of engagements we perform. So I'll cover the background and the purpose and role of the Audit Committee, and then overview of our division and the types of engagements. So Audit Committee background, the Audit Committee was created and the bylaws were first approved in January of 2013. It consists of 2 Board of Supervisor members, the CAO, County Council, and 1 department head. The purpose of the Audit Committee is to assist the Board of Supervisors in fulfilling its oversight responsibilities for the financial reporting process, system of internal controls, the audit process, and the county's process for monitoring compliance with laws and regulations and the code of conduct, and that's straight from the bylaws. So the role of the Audit Committee is to approve the annual audit plan, independently assess the auditor's reports and findings, provide additional feedback and recommendations to departments as needed, and to assist the auditors ensuring that departments implement adequate corrective action. So this is the org chart of the Auditor Controller's Office, and you can see the Financial Reporting and Audits Division is one of 4 divisions within the office. We currently have 6 accountant auditors that report to the principal accountant auditor and myself. We have 2 vacancies, which we currently have a recruitment out to fill those vacancies. And we are under the direction of the Auditor Controller, Cass Cook, and the Assistant Auditor Controller, Tara Freitas, who signs the audit engagements. So for financial reporting side of the division, we prepare the comprehensive annual financial report. or the CAFR. We are the final approval of all journal voucher transactions in AFIN. Compile a single audit and work with outside auditors, Brown Armstrong. We also work on special projects. And most recently, we assisted HR with labor negotiation or calculations for labor negotiations. Assisted the CAO's office with the issuance of the POB, monitoring POB rates for department charges, and assist departments in training of fiscal staff. On the audit side of the division, we perform quarterly and surprise cash counts of the Treasury and tax collector, monitor special districts within the county for audit report filing requirements, and provide a yearly report which is sent to the Board of Supervisors and the grand jury. Administer the county's fraud hotline. We develop the risk assessment and audit plan, and of course conduct audit and consulting engagements which are presented to this committee. So types of engagements. We follow the standards issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors or the Red Book. We perform risk-based audits, follow-up audits, which follow-up audits are required for risk-based audits. Department head change consulting engagements, which are performed due to government code. Cash shortage and overage audits, which assess and control internal controls over cash. And we also perform requested engagements. I'll go over these 5 types of audits in more detail. The risk-based audits are chosen based on the results of the risk assessment. They are a thorough audit of a particular business cycle, which I'll go over the business cycles, and they take anywhere from 300 to 500 hours, depending on the business cycle. Obviously, payroll taking more time than cash receipts or cash disbursements. So the 7 business cycles: cash disbursements, payroll, fixed assets, cash receipts, fee-generated revenue, fiduciary, and revolving funds, which they may be some outside bank accounts or change funds, cash difference funds. So the risk assessment, it starts with the questionnaire, and it's one of 4 sections to determine risk. The questionnaire is sent to all departments each spring and assesses changes in the department, such as management turnover, review compliance with policies and procedures, and other areas of interest. The risk is assessed in each of the 7 business cycles, and the questionnaire is updated annually based on prior audit findings and current issues that we see throughout the year. The level of risk, it's assessed as low, medium, or high based on the questionnaire we just went over, time since the most recent audit, changes in financial data since prior fiscal year, and the other areas of risk which we obtain through communication with other departments, and then issues that we may see throughout the year, such as late fees, late payment fees, excessive payroll manual warrants. After that, we prepare the audit plan, and the results of the audit plan are presented to the Audit Committee. This committee determines the order of the engagements to be performed, and the Financial Reporting and Audits Division performs as many as time permits. Follow-up audit determines if recommendations have been implemented. They are conducted no sooner than 6 months after the report is presented to the Audit Committee, and they typically take 100 to 150 hours. And of course, they must be performed based on IA standards, and it's a follow-up of the initial risk-based audit. Department head changes. Consulting engagements, they're a limited engagement. They assess the internal controls over the transfer of assets from the prior department head to the current, expenditures such as credit cards and travel, payroll, the new pay rate for the new department head, and the final payout for the leaving department head, and other areas of interest such as the 700 form. And those typically take about 100 hours. A cash shortage or overage audit. They may be performed when there's a cash shortage or overage greater than $10, addresses the adequacy of internal controls over cash in compliance with the county cash manual. They take around 100 hours. And throughout the year, we receive memos and notifications from departments of all cash shortage and overs. We keep a list of that, and we may perform an audit depending on when the last time we were out there to review their controls over cash or cash receipts audit. Requested engagements. Last type of engagement we perform, it's performed at the request of a department or the audit committee. Most recent examples are the HSA welfare audit based on the incident of fraud, the clerk recorder Social Security truncation program, which was required by government code. And the hours on these engagements vary depending on the type of audit. So our current audits in progress, we have 2 race-based audits, the sheriff, payroll, and fire payroll, and we are currently drafting the reports for those. Recently started the department head change for the ag commissioner who retired on 3/29. Might be kind of hard to see. This is a chart showing the risk-based audits we performed the last 5 years, and if you don't see a department on there, it's because we haven't performed an engagement. These are only departments that have had an audit in the last 5 years. On the left-hand side, you can see the department, and across the top is the business cycle. We've performed the full cycle of capital projects, solid waste, and the NA means that the department doesn't have that business cycle related to that department. And as departments like purchasing was moved to General Services Agency, we'll update this accordingly and be merging them with if any new audits were to be performed. An election, of course, it's its own department now. Department head changes the last 5 years. We had quite a bit of turnover in department heads. The list here of all the departments we've done. CAO, there's the 2 there, means obviously they've had 2 department head changes. RMA's had 3, HSA with 2, and child support with 2. Cash shortage and overage audits. The last 5 years, had the auditor on the tax collector and treasurer side, general services, parks and recreation, HSA, animal control, library, probation. Our most recent one was RMA Permit Center, and of course, solid waste. So in summary, Audit Committee was established 2013. The role is to approve the annual audit plan, assess reports and findings, provide additional feedback to departments, and assist in oversight, corrective action. Types of audits: risk-based, follow-up, department head changes, cash shortage and overage audits, and requested engagements. That concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from committee members?
So one quick question, the second follow-up audits, how are those determined? I know we have one today, the follow-up audit is required, the second follow-up, is that just depending on the magnitude of the findings in the first follow-up?
No, if the audit isn't closed out, we continue it until the department implements corrective action to close out the audit. So we'll perform a second and a third, depending on the findings of the follow-up audit.
Any other questions? Question that I had, when you talk about the types of audits that we are doing, and I understand that based upon the amount of time that you have allotted to perform the audits, we're able to cover these, and we're probably not looking for additional things to do. But I know that one thing that some departments have done in the past is go out and hire an external auditor to come in and audit processes and efficiencies and operations. Is that a functionality that we can ever incorporate into what your department does so that we could provide that service internally versus having to go outside and hire an outside firm to come in and do that?
Yeah, we've discussed this internally, and we can do more of an analysis on it and come back to the committee.
Because that's something I would like to see. You know, it's always good to get a set of new eyes from the outside coming in, and maybe there's benefit there, but I often feel that the set of eyes just from even another internal department can provide some insights, and we could probably do that at a much cheaper rate than, you know, I'm thinking last year there was a proposal, and Assistant Sheriff Douglas may be able to assist me, but there was an outside firm that was going to come in and audit the sheriff's department, and I believe that cost was upwards or over $1 million, and there might have been some information that is going to be gleaned from that outside firm that we could have provided internally, for, I'm sure, a little less than $1 million as what an outside firm would have cost. So I bring that up as just an opportunity. I know a lot of departments are looking at internal services, and prior to this current auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, the main focus was on external customer service, which meant non-county customers, but we do have county customers or internal customer service that we can provide, and internal auditing can definitely be one of those things.
And we will look into that and come back to you. I will say it's not our expertise yet.
Yeah.
It's something we would have to work on to get up to that level to do.
And even if we had to work on it, I just think that it could be a worthwhile effort that would help and ultimately end up paying for itself in the savings we could generate within other departments.
Come back to you with a recommendation.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any further questions or comments from committee members? All right, seeing none, this was just a presentation and introduction, and now we will move on to item 5, which is a request to review and accept the Health and Human Services Agency Department Head Change Consulting Engagement Report.
Mr. Chair, I will recuse myself for items 5 and 6 since I am subjected to both items.
And there were many findings, so I'm glad that you are doing that. Thank you, Jason.
All right, good morning.
Just going to go sit in the audience? You want to go out the back door so we can talk freely about you?
I may need to make the management report.
All right, there you go.
Okay, so you can be in the audience.
And now we have Jason Britt in a new chair. That's what we'll work that out too. He was over here, now he's here, and now he's there. The many faces of Jason Britt. Go ahead.
All right, good morning, members of the Audit Committee and new members. My name is Amanda Monge, and I'll be presenting the Health and Human Services Agency Department Head Change Consulting Engagement. So as Justin previously mentioned, the purpose is to account for selected property under the control of the existing County of Tulare Department Head, as well as determine the agency's compliance with established internal controls, policies, and procedures in the selected areas. So we test the last 2 months of the prior department head, and then the first month of the incoming department head, which dictates the scope of the engagement, which is shown on the screen. So this table shows the areas we perform testing in and the results. As you can see, assets, which is testing inventory of personal property and personal assets, such as a credit card, cell phone, or laptop, were returned timely. Form 700, as well as access, so Novell, AFIN, signer-on bank accounts, was all terminated timely, were all tested without exception. The areas with an X merely indicate that there was an exception found in that area of testing. Please note, we typically test credit card expenditures and travel claims, but the agency did not have any during the scope of our engagement that we tested. Moving on to the first finding, A, cash handling. So the agency collects at 8 locations. We selected 2 of those locations to perform testing at. The 2 locations were vital statistics and public health travel immunizations. So beginning with vital statistics, as you can see, the same employee who opens the mail sometimes prepares the deposits. So this is a concern because an employee could potentially steal funds received in the mail without it being detected. Therefore, we recommend better segregation of duties should be established by having a separate employee open the mail from the employee who prepares the deposit. All right, cash handling continue also at vital statistics. The key to the filing cabinet where the cash bag is kept when not in use is kept on the front counter, which is accessible by other employees. We recommended the key be kept in a secure location. All right, moving on to public health travel immunizations. So as shown in the table, 3 of the 15 collection tested, or 20% of the sample, was not deposited timely. Per the deposit frequency table in the County of Tulare cash manual, all of these amounts fell under $500, which should be deposited within 5 business days. The table on the screen shows that the collections were not deposited until 8 and 12 business days after they should have been deposited based on that frequency table. The Same location, one employee keeps their cash bag in an unlocked filing cabinet in the supervisor's office and is accessible by multiple employees. And again, we just recommended that the employee keep their bag in a more secure location. All right. Cash is not reconciled daily during flu season, which is September through April, due to time constraints as a result of increased patient visits. And daily reconciliation is important because if a discrepancy is found, it can be resolved timely. So at both locations, don't have a supervisor initial voided receipts. And this is our most worrisome finding because if voids are not reviewed and approved, there's a greater chance for theft to occur. An employee can collect cash, enter it on the cash collection log, then void the entry and steal the cash with it potentially going unnoticed. Moving on to finding B, sick and vacation accrual credits not given timely. Per the resolution on the screen, the current department head was authorized to receive a 20-hour sick and 20-hour vacation credit effective January 7, 2019, but was not until February 21st of 2019. We understand this is an uncommon occurrence, and we were unable to determine whose responsibility it truly fell under. The agency inputs the credits but receives the resolutions from HR&D. The agency did express that they will work with HR&D to create a process for timely notification in the future. Right, finding C, incorrect accounting line. So there's two components to this finding. The accounting line on the supporting documentation did not match the one listed in AFIN, and the details on the daily cash control sheet, which is shown on the screen, weren't calculated correctly. The overall total for the CR was correct, but due to the two components, the individual calculated amounts could potentially have been allocated incorrectly. I'd like to thank the agency for their time, cooperation during the engagement, and would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions or comments from committee members? I just think this is a great example for the new members of what issues can be uncovered in an audit. Some may seem very minor, like the depositing timeframes, but cash is king. We have to make sure we're depositing our money timely. We see opportunities for fraud in keeping cash bags in unlocked drawers and in places where employees have multiple points of access. So we see opportunities for fraud. We may not have fraud be occurring, but we have seen in other instances where fraud has occurred and where money has been taken. And we want to prevent that from happening. And so that's why this committee is important, and these types of engagements are important as well. If there's no further questions, this is a request to review and accept the report. Is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
I have a motion by Member Hess.
Second?
Second by Member Valero. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. I should probably slam this harder. This is Crocker's gavel. He should get it kind of dented up as a souvenir. Okay, that's enough. We'll now move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is a request to review and accept the County Administrative Office Department Head Change Consulting Engagement Report.
On that as well. So again, just to start off, we test the last 2 months of the prior department head had responsibility, and the first month the current department head, which dictates the scope. So, and again, the assets, Form 700 and access were all tested without exception. The areas with an X just indicate there was an exception found in the testing area. Finding A, cash handling. The key to the access, the change fund lockbox, was kept sitting in an unlocked front desk drawer, so we recommended it be kept in a secure location.
I think that should be blamed on the clerk, just saying. Go ahead. Oh, shoot, she's here. I didn't even see the voice of God sitting in front of me. Okay.
So Cash handling continued. So the office did not have pre-printed receipts with the office name and County of Tulare, in addition to not having a supervisor initial voided receipts, which is extremely important to assure theft does not occur. As you can see, 13 out of the 21 collections tested, or 62% of the collections, were not deposited timely. Most of the amounts were minimal, but as you can see, there was a deposit for just over $23,000, which needs to be deposited the next business day per the deposit frequency table, as you can see on the screen. And the days late indicated in the table are business days after the deposit frequency. So we recommend that even the smaller collections collected by the office be deposited weekly. Finding B, travel claims. 2 of the 3 dates were not visible due to the column widths being too narrow. In addition, the one visible date was incorrect according to the agenda shown on the screen. In all fairness, these forms are not ideal, and our office is going to look into revisiting the format to make it more user-friendly. Right, travel claims continued. The other travel claim did not indicate the exact time of departure from and return to the county. Also, the unit on the travel claim did not match that shown in AFIN. The unit on the travel claim was 3050, which is for clerk of the board. The unit in AFIN was 3000 for the CAO staff, so it appears that the unit entered in AFIN was correct. Finding C, inadequate supporting documentation. So AR40 requires a statement by the department head explaining the costs incurred are related to items and events held pursuant to the employee appreciation policy, and gives a list of attendees, which we see departments often use sign-in sheets to fulfill this requirement. In addition, the items purchased cannot exceed $10 limit for any single employee. Since the office did not include these with the supporting documentation, we were unable to verify their compliance with AR40. And please note, the department needs to provide an itemized receipt with the supporting documentation. Finding D, missing signatures. This one pertains to credit cards. One of the credit card statements reviewed was not signed for approval at the time it was uploaded as supporting documentation in AFIN. For our audit records, it's important to have the signed copy uploaded. And missing signatures pertaining to the timesheet and final pay card. We noted the prior department head did not sign the timesheet or final pay card, which should be done before separating from the county. We realize this isn't always feasible, but we recommend the prior department head review their timesheet and final pay card before signing and then leaving. So with that, I'd like to thank the office for their time and cooperation during the engagement and be happy to answer any questions they have.
Any questions or comments?
Quick question, it mentioned that they discontinued using the iNova system. Was there difficulties with that system, or is there a newer cash collection system that the department's using?
I think that, and the office might be able to answer this better than I can, there just wasn't as much of a need for it, which in turn switched over, or did away with the iNova system. Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, this is a request to review and accept. Chair will entertain a motion. All right, we have a motion from Member Flores. A second from Member Valero. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Please note the abstention and non-action of the CAO who was sitting in the audience. Not really recusing himself, but welcome back, Jason. Next, we're going to move on to take up item 7, which is a request to review and accept the Solid Waste Department full cycle second follow-up audit report.
Morning, members of the committee. My name is Kelsey Tolber. I'm the principal accountant auditor, and I'll be going over the results of the solid waste second follow-up audit. The initial audit report for this engagement was June 30th, 2015. As you can see on this table, the only recommendation not implemented is late payments. So I'll go over that on the next slide. but the capital assets procedures manual recommendation pertain to ensuring assets have a county tag number and vehicles have a property of Tulare County for official use only sticker. So we reviewed a sample of their assets and we determined that that was implemented. And then we had 2 payroll register findings that were similar, so we combined them on this slide. But they pertain to ensuring that timesheets agreed with the employee's paycheck and hours were coded properly in Enterprise. So we reviewed a sample of those timesheets and paychecks and determined that that was implemented as well. So we have late payments. Based on our second follow-up testing, we found that 58% of the payments tested were late, which is more than the acceptable threshold. These late payments are shown on the slide, and they're sorted by number of days late. The department's late payments have actually increased from the initial audit to the first follow-up audit, and then now to this second one. So they went from 28% to 40% and now 58%. Therefore, it appears that there's no evidence to support meaningful movement towards implementation. With that said, we want to thank the Solid Waste Department for their cooperation during the engagement, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions or comments regarding the solid waste engagement? Sure, go ahead.
Why they haven't, and this is really for the department, haven't been able to, I guess, get these payments made timely? What's the barrier?
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Guillermo Hermoso, and I'll be here to speak on behalf of the Solid Waste Department today. In regards to your question, we weren't running the report to show that the days that the invoices were getting processed. What we were looking at was simply their inbox and seeing if they had picked it up and put it on their task list. And so there was an oversight on our part to ensure that there wasn't any accountability on the person that was paying the bills. So that's why we had that. But going forward, we implemented that into our workflow, so we should be able to control that now going forward.
Further? Thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion regarding the acceptance of this report.
Make the motion.
Okay, I have a motion by member Valero, second by member Britt. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, come on. I noticed our auditing staff was falling asleep. I know auditing in general can be a sleepy subject, but when the auditors themselves are falling asleep, I just thought I'd wake them up. Okay, so now we're going to move on to take up item 8 for a more lively report dealing with the Sheriff's Department. A request to review and accept the Sheriff's Office Cash Disbursement Cycle Audit Report.
So I'll be going over that report as well. The scope of this audit was July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. We tested cash disbursements, including credit cards. So in fiscal year 17, the office had just over $678,000 in credit card expenses, and we tested about $86,000 of that amount. We also tested travel, and in fiscal year 17, the office had about $149,000 in travel expenses, and we tested almost $2,000 of that amount. We also tested other areas such as JVs and PRCs. Also, please just keep in mind that we typically just look at a sample of the population, so although there may just be 1 or 2 instances that we found, there could potentially be a greater fiscal impact. So based on testing, we found the office has the following strengths. They paid the correct sales tax on all purchases tested. Sales tax comes into play when a vendor is out of the area and there's a different tax rate than the county. And all travel expenses tested had the correct per diem and were recorded properly in AFIN. And all JVs tested had sufficient support. All invoices tested were paid accurately, and all credit card support tested agreed with AFIN. Although the office excelled in many areas, we did find some weakness in their internal controls and compliance with policies and procedures, so I'll go over those results. Starting with finding A, late payments and fees. 55% of the payments tested were late. These late payments are shown in the table on the slide, and again are sorted by number of days late. We did exclude any documents purchased with what's known as a delivery order or a DO, because they were known to cause payment delays countywide during the time of our audit. But as of July 2018, DOs are no longer used by the county, so it shouldn't be a problem going forward. You may notice that the last payment listed is 3.7 years late. Per inquiry with the office, despite contacting the vendor multiple times, the vendor did not actually send them the invoice until over 3 years later. In fiscal year 17, the office paid nearly $15,000 in credit card late fees. Of this amount, about $1,700 was paid to U.S. Bank, which was 52% of the total late fees paid by all other county departments combined, and over 3 times the amount paid by the department with the second highest number of late fees. So in order to allow management to effectively monitor these late fees and also to promote transparency, we recommend that the department start recording their late fees to the object code in AFIN. So in the past, departments use this code inconsistently, but we are going to start enforcing it going forward through our claims division. We also recommend that the office utilize the late payment report that our office developed, and it's an effective tool for management to be able to see how long it's taking to process their payments. Next, we have finding B, circumvention of the $4,000 purchase limit. So per the purchasing policies and procedures, credit cards and direct pays can only be used for purchases up to $4,000, and circumvention of the limit is strictly prohibited. However, we found 4 instances in which the $4,000 limit was exceeded. One of the instances is shown on the slide. As you can see, the invoice is just for over $6,500, but on the credit card statement, it was actually split into 2 separate transactions on the credit card statement, one for exactly $4,000 and then one for the remainder. We also found 5 separate credit card purchases totaling just over $4,200 that were made at the same store within minutes apart of each other, and then 2 direct pays, one for nearly $5,000 and one for over $12,000. So going forward, if the department needs to make a purchase over $4,000, they need to follow the appropriate county procedures.
Real quick, just a quick comment. I see why Sheriff Boudreaux sent Assistant Sheriff Douglas. He didn't want to hear this, so, but way to go, Keith. Thanks for stepping up. Good to see you.
Okay, so next we have finding C, payments recorded in the incorrect fiscal year. We found 2 payments erroneously recorded in fiscal year 17. This included 1 credit card payment for over $25,000 that should have been recorded in fiscal year 16, and then 1 payment for nearly $6,000 that should have been recorded in fiscal year 13. Not recording payments in the correct fiscal year causes the county's financial statements to be misstated, which could potentially end up as a finding from our external auditors and reflect poorly on the county. Therefore, we recommend that the office carefully review all invoices, especially those directly before and after fiscal year end, to ensure they're recorded in the correct year. Finding D, duplicate payments. So we discovered 4 instances of duplicate payments, 2 payments for $583 issued on the same date for the same utility bill, 2 payments for $6,690 issued on the same date, 2 payments for $9,281 issued 35 days apart, and 4 payments for the same invoice of $6,099. All these duplicate payments were caught and applied as a credit by the vendor. In order to prevent duplicate payments from being submitted, AFIN does have a control that prohibits the same invoice number to be entered more than once for the same vendor. However, the department wasn't entering invoice numbers consistently, so it made this control ineffective. So to minimize duplicate payments going forward, the auditor's office recently implemented a new countywide invoice numbering system, which has already been distributed to all county departments, and will also be going over it in our spring training in May, and at least 1 representative from each department attends that training. Finding E, lack of signatures on credit card statements. So the Tulare County credit card policy requires cardholders and approvers, a cardholder and approver to sign the credit card statements. However, 15% of the statements tested were not signed appropriately. One was missing the cardholder's signature, one was missing the approver's signature, and one was missing both. It's important that statements are signed because signatures show acceptance and approval for the purchases, and they also establish accountability. Finding F, additional day of travel. Typically, employees are allowed 1 day of travel before and after a training. However, we found one employee who traveled 2 days prior to their training. And then for airport parking, rental car, and hotel, that cost the county $213. So just keep in mind that although this is just the one instance that we found, we do only look at a sample, so there could potentially be more instances.
And real quick, just a quick question on that. I mean, it seems that this is, obviously, the department should have oversight of this, but is this a request then that the auditor would make to that specific employee? Hey, you submitted this, and this falls outside of county policy. Please write us a check for $213.
It was questioned during our claims approval process. The reason given we felt wasn't substantial enough to warrant the 1 day in the auditor's opinion.
So did you make the request that it be paid back?
We have not.
I mean, because to me, you know, I still go back, and this is a complaint that I have with Rita Woodard, but I think I paid like, what was it, Mel? You remember? Was it? And I wrote the check, and I wish I would have framed the check because I wrote a pretty snide comment on the comment line. But I think it was for like $4.32, and I purchased a Jamba Juice on my drive back from Sacramento instead of a $20 lunch, and I bought it outside the lunch hour, and so freaking Rita Woodard made me write a check for $3.23 or something like that. I mean, it cost me more to put it in the mail than whatever. But I mean, I bring up this point, you know, $213 is $213. Assistant Sheriff.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor. The department we've already contacted the employee, and we're making repayment arrangements on it.
Great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Appreciate it. Anyone else have any comments about Rita Woodard? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I liked it. See, Cass, you got a great sense of humor, man. Thanks for at least standing up. Appreciate it. Okay. Carry on. My apologies.
Okay. Next, we have finding G, travel advances not in compliance. So as highlighted on the slide, the travel expense advance request form is shown. Those two yellow highlights say to forward request to the auditor controller a minimum of 2 weeks prior to planned travel, and travel advances will not be issued to employees holding a county credit card. However, based on testing of 8 travel advances, we found 2 that were submitted less than 2 weeks prior to travel and 4 that were paid to an employee holding a county credit card. Next, we have finding H, claims for mileage reimbursement lack required details. Per Administrative Regulation Number 1, claims for mileage reimbursement must include the dates and times, destination, and purpose of the trips. However, all 6 travel claims tested had insufficient mileage logs. The miles claimed and the amount paid for the 6 travel claims tested are shown on the slide. Just be aware that these are the only ones we tested. It's not the entire population. So due to the insufficient mileage logs, we are unable to determine whether the mileage was work-related, accurate, or reasonable. They also didn't satisfy the IRS's adequate accounting requirements. And the potential issue with this is that without properly substantiated travel expenses, the IRS could argue that those reimbursements should have been included as taxable wages on their W-2. This slide shows an example of one of the mileage logs submitted. As you can see, it only shows the weekly odometer readings and then the miles, but it doesn't provide any detail on specific dates, destinations, or purpose of the trips. However, in August 2018, we did bring this up to the department, and we worked with them to create a template that they could utilize that satisfies all the requirements, and per the department, they've been using that ever since. Finding I, misuse of Voyager credit cards. As you may know, some departments, including the sheriff's office, utilize Voyager cards to purchase fuel at gas stations other than the county motor pool stations. And per inquiry with the county's fleet services, there's no county vehicles that require the use of premium grade fuel. However, based on our review of about 1,200 Voyager card transactions made during fiscal year 17, we found 95 that were for either unleaded plus or unleaded super fuel. And these types of fuel are premium grade, so they typically cost between 10 to 20 cents more per gallon than just the regular unleaded fuel. The example of the Voyager card report we used to determine the type of fuel is shown on the slide, and then the yellow highlights show the unleaded plus or unleaded super fuels. So we recommend the office start reviewing their Voyager card statements and for any premium fuel purchases and address it with their employees. Finding J, lack of adequate historical records. The office doesn't keep adequate historical records related to their county-issued vehicles or Voyager credit cards. Specifically, the office was unable to identify the employee and Voyager card assigned to each vehicle, the make and model of the vehicles, and other pertinent information for the scope of our audit. This caused a scope limitation, and we were unable to verify if an employee who purchased fuel on a Voyager card also submitted travel claims for mileage reimbursement for that same trip, if the gallons of fuel purchased were reasonable for the make and model of the vehicle. So for example, a Ford Fusion typically holds 14 gallons of fuel. So if we saw a 24-gallon purchase, obviously that wouldn't be feasible, but it would be feasible for a Ford F-250 truck. So that's the reason why we need the make and models to be able to verify that. And we are also unable to verify the reasoning behind the 16 instances found in which fuel was purchased within minutes apart on the same Voyager card. So each vehicle is assigned its own Voyager card, so it does appear questionable when fuel is purchased back-to-back on the same card. Therefore, we recommend the office develop a historical record-keeping system or procedure to enable them to validate their fuel purchases. According to the office's management responses, they have already implemented 9 out of 10 of our recommendations. So we'll conduct our follow-up audit no sooner than 6 months from now to substantiate this, but we want to thank the Sheriff's Office for their cooperation and willingness to implement our recommendations so quickly. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
I see Assistant Sheriff standing there, and I don't think it's for security purposes. Do you have any comments you'd like to make, or were you just tired of sitting down?
No, sir. Just available for any questions as the auditor. First off, Keith Douglas, Assistant Sheriff of the Sheriff's Office, on behalf of Mike Boudreau. We want to thank the auditor and the staff for this. It was enlightening to us to be able to see where we could improve upon on some of our efficiencies. And as Kelsey said, we've already implemented 9 out of the 10. Believe it or not, the vehicle database is probably going to be the hardest one, just because I'm going to be asking the CIO for some money for it. So the way we track our vehicles isn't, we rotate cars frequently. So for that historical data, it's going to be just a little bit of a challenge for us, but we'll make it. But I'm here to answer any questions that the committee may have.
And just a comment that I have is thank you for your willingness, or for the department's willingness to adopt these suggestions and the changes to make your department more efficient and to hold accountable those that are maybe not dotting I's and crossing T's. So I think that's just great. Some are very resistant to it, DA, but your department has been very open to it, and that is very appreciative, or I'm very appreciative for that. So that's how we get better and ultimately end up serving our constituents the best.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment. So just to be clear, whether it's $4, whether it be Jamba Juice, or the 213.
Man, you're gonna take shots at me, Valero? Come on.
Or the 213. We have to really be serious about the parameters of such use. And so whether intentional or unintentional, this is just one of potentially others that, again, have really not taken the credit card use into consideration. So again, just thank you again for bringing it to light and making sure that again, we stick to kind of the requirements of the use of such cards. So thank you.
Anything further? No comments from the attorneys? Did you like my DA little jab there?
Not us.
Okay. I know he's a fellow attorney. I mean, attorneys like seeing other attorneys criticized. So, okay. Thank you very much, Assistant Sheriff. And please do thank Sheriff Boudreaux as well for his indulgence and adherence to these recommendations.
I will do that. Thank you, sir.
Okay. This is a request to review and accept. I will entertain a motion. All right, I have a motion by Member Hess and a second by Member Britt. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, the same? See, it was a quiet one that time. Small dent. All right, next is item 9, request to entertain the 2018-2019 revised audit plan.
So as a result of our audit of the Sheriff's Office cash disbursement cycle, we discovered there's a lack of county wide policies governing the use of Voyager credit cards, which, as I mentioned previously, are used to purchase fuel for county vehicles. So as a result, we observed inconsistencies and irregularities in the use of these cards that we feel would be more effectively controlled if standardized policies and procedures were implemented. Due to this and the inherent risk of the use of fuel cards, we feel it would be beneficial to perform a countywide audit of Voyager cards. And then as you can see on the table on this slide, we revised the approved audit plan by adding the Voyager card fuel audit to the top of the list. We deem it to be a higher risk than the other 3 audits listed.
I love that you got the district attorney listed again. He's going to have a conniption fit. That's great.
Yeah, and we feel it's important to address it timely as well. The remaining 3 audits were approved by the Audit Committee at the July 2018 meeting in the order shown. I'll quickly go over the reasoning why each were chosen. So District Attorney cash disbursements was selected due to high turnover and also a high number of late payments. General Services cash receipts was selected due to having multiple cash shortages throughout the year. And then library cash receipts was selected due to having a multiple cash or a high number of cash locations. So we'll begin the audits as time permits. But to be transparent, we do only have 3 months left in the fiscal year, and we're also approaching CAFR season. So we're thinking we could probably get done about 2 of the audits or start 2 of the audits. So with that said, we're requesting approval from the Audit Committee for our revised audit plan.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
I have a question, Kelsey. So when you do the Voyager fuel credit card fuel audit countywide, will you also be auditing the number of vehicles that are assigned to departments and ensuring that they are sort of one-to-one? That's typically how they're issued, is one card to one vehicle, but not.
Yeah, I mean, we can. That could be an aspect of what we look at. So looking at the number of vehicles to make sure that it looks appropriate for the staff.
I would just think that would be part of it, because I
Okay.
mean, I don't know how each department really hands out their Voyager cards. I mean, I would
Right.
assume it would be like 1 per unit, but I don't know that. So it just might be helpful to see how they, A, link the credit card to the vehicles, and B, whether or not they have the number of stated vehicles that is tracked by fleet or general services or other.
Yeah, and then just to clarify too, each vehicle is assigned its own Voyager card, so you could assume that for every vehicle there's 1 Voyager card.
They're collected every year, is that right? They're collected and distributed new cars per vehicle?
I believe so. So they all have the same expiration date, so it's just a mass overhauling every year to issue the new cards.
I was just going to comment that I appreciate the flexibility of the plan to move around items based upon the risk levels. So I'm supportive of the revisions as presented.
Yeah, for general services, we appreciate the Voyager card looking into that, because that's definitely something that hasn't been addressed for a long time. So we appreciate the findings that were developed through the audit, the Sheriff's Department audit, as well as making it a priority to refine that process and how departments utilize that Voyager, so we can even maximize our utilization of the county's fueling system and direct those dollars to that system as much as possible.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? All right, this is a request to approve the revisions to the plan. I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion from Member Britt.
Second.
Second from Member Hess. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. We're now going to move on to item 10, which is committee member and staff matters.
So I actually just wanted to bring up something that you mentioned earlier, which is internal audits. And I think that is something that we need to spotlight in hopefully being more efficient with with our time, but also with funds used within. And I just wanted to point out something that we did at our school board, which again is different in scope of work, but similar in theme. And so when we were on the school board, we wanted greater accountability in our instruction in the classroom to provide the gift, which is great instruction first time. And so we charged the administration to develop a plan that would occur. And so what each school site did was actually create an instructional round cohort where they would spend 2 times a year. They would go to a different school site within Cutler-Osage Joint Unified. So if it was Cutler Elementary School, that cohort would go to Golden Valley, and they would spend 2 days. The first day internally going to all of the classrooms, and then on the second day, they would review the findings and share it with the administration at Golden Valley. And that committee consisted of an administrator, teachers, and staff. So obviously different, but that's something that the school did to make sure that, or the district did to make sure that every school site was moving forward in the same arrows in the same direction. So just a thought in terms of how we begin to approach a model that will work for our county in making sure that we're all following our guidelines and moving forward.
And I could see something like that working for the county, although it's not going to be a campus basis, it could be a department basis. Coming up with plans and evaluating each other and
yeah, so they wouldn't do instructional rounds at their own school site. That cohort would move to a different school site, and then vice versa.
Yeah. Could work, something like that. So yeah, the options are out there. I think it's great you're looking into it, and if you come back with a recommendation, that'd be fantastic. Any other questions or comments? You saying no to an opportunity to talk, an attorney saying no to an opportunity to talk? I just can't believe it, and I'm baffled. Okay. Politician saying no to an opportunity? Okay. All right. Given there is nothing further to be considered, now we do have Jason wanting to talk.
Well,
Go ahead.
the Mrs. God here was just reminding
the voice of God.
Reminding us that our July 11th meeting, we likely will be displaced due to the chamber remodel.
So, as an alternative site, do we want to go and meet in the asbestos-filled courthouse? Is there like a conference room? No, I'm kidding. Or we can use General Services Office. That's a great idea. They have and we could go to Cigna, to the sheriff's building. I actually would feel very safe there. Given we're going to be talking about the DA and auditing, we should probably go to the sheriff's department.
You need some location that's accessible to the public.
Yes.
And we could do it.
HR&D has a big conference room, so.
That would work. Where are you going to have the board meeting?
Yeah, that's true.
Off-site. Where am I going?
Not sure. We'll have to.
DC's June.
To be determined.
I thought DC's
the date
in June.
and location may change.
Okay, so the clerk will coordinate with committee members to establish the date and location of the July 11th meeting, if it is to be held on July 11th. Okay, if there's no further committee member or staff matters, we will move on to Supervisor Valero's favorite item on the agenda. That's item 11, adjournment. Thank you all for attending today. This meeting is adjourned. See, I try to keep things moving along.